going to unmute you. So. Producer Scott Pennyman. We got Emily Gagnon out there, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, waiting to go back and forth with me. Emily, how's everything going?
What up? Everything's good. Beautiful night so far. I hear weather's going to come through later, so this is the time to be outside of the Benz. Though earlier you were inside of there.
I was inside there. It was pretty cool.
Mandatory minicamp.
Yeah. It was really cool to get some of the, to kind of see everyone back for minicamp. But we'll get to that one in a moment, right? We'll get to talking. We're going to talk about the Falcons enough. First things first, let's start. The Denver Nuggets win the NBA championship, right? I know that's a big surprise. We got our guy Miles over there holding up a big thing of chicken McNuggets from McDonald's. He's happy, obviously, because the team that beat his Boston Celtics fell 4 games to 1 in the NBA Finals. They're pretty much dominated the entire series. The Nuggets win the NBA title, in grand fashion. Nikola Jokic, as most of us could expect, NBA Finals MVP. Emily, what's your take away from the Denver Nuggets' domination of the Miami Heat?
I love to see the celebration last night. It really appeared like listen, that's never happened in Denver before. Only 12 teams, I talked about it yesterday, have not won a championship in the NBA. The Denver Nuggets were one of the 12. Now there's 11 left, so they crossed it off. We can cross them off the list of teams that have not won a ring. But you could tell, right? I just felt like their celebration was extra. It was like none of us have been here before. Let's really enjoy the moment. And it just, the Joker made it sweeter, in my opinion. It just felt so personal, right? Like it felt like it was so personal for him because of his journey to getting to where he is and being able to win and the MVP. To me, it felt like a huge chip was lifted off of his shoulder. That's just my opinion. You could watch interviews where people spoke about him or even didn't want him around or whatever the case may be, or at least this is what he's saying. And look at what happened. I mean, he's the star now.
Yeah, I think when you think about where he came from, right, just being a second-round pick in the NBA draft to being, winning a couple league MVPs, and those years he won the league MVPs, he didn't have his horses with him. Jamal Murray was out. Michael Porter Jr. missed the playoffs last year as well. So for a couple years, people were kind of like, wow, Nikola Jokic, I mean, he keeps winning NBA MVPs, but is he really that guy? Because he isn't really taking his team anywhere. That's kind of what we thought for a couple years. And then, bam, he gets back Jamal Murray this season, gets back Michael Porter Jr., and immediately wins an NBA championship. And then we see all the skills, all the talent, all the ability that made him an NBA MVP. But not only that, just all the skills and all the talent and ability that lifted his team to a championship level. And I think what we saw was sort of, just that next, he's up next, right? I mean, every year we kind of see, a new team emerge or whatever. It's the Denver Nuggets are kind of up next. And I think when you look at their team, I think more than any other team who's won the championship in the last few years, it looks like they're going to be here for a while. Just when you look at the pieces and parts around Jokic, I mean, Jamal Murray, he's locked in to a long-term contract. You have Michael Porter Jr., he's locked into a long-term contract. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, the former UGA dog, he's locked into a long-term contract. So Denver has everything in place to make this maybe a back-to-back championship sort of thing, or at least be in the championship mix for the next 3 or 4 years easily.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to love to see it, right? Because it's like new blood.
Yes.
You love to see teams that just haven't been there before. You already know your Celtics and your Lakers. I'm sorry, Miles. And you already know those guys. But for Denver right now, it just appears like it's their turn. It's been so long, and it was really, really cool to see. Like I said, I enjoyed most watching the celebration just because it looked like it meant something. Not that other teams, when they celebrate, they don't look a certain kind of way, but it just felt like kids in a candy store. They hadn't done it before. They hadn't been there. It's like they didn't even know how to celebrate. They were all over the place, and I loved it. I loved every second of it.
Yes.
But the Joker, he really gets what he put in, and it took some time. You have to be patient sometimes, but in the end, all worked out for him, and he's getting exactly what he deserves.
Yeah, I mean, just look, coming from a guy who grew up watching a small market basketball team play. Look, it's hard for small markets to compete for NBA championships because, number one, it's hard to get superstars, and then when you get superstars, it's hard to get guys to want to play with those superstars, and long term, it's hard to keep those superstars because a lot of guys don't want to play in small markets. So anytime I see a small market team like Milwaukee, like my Cleveland Cavaliers, like the Denver Nuggets, anytime a less than, I guess, anybody outside of LA, Boston, or sort of your regular places that people want to play, anytime a smaller market wins an NBA title, I just smile. I feel good because it lets other small markets feel like they have a chance. They have an opportunity to win an NBA championship. Yeah, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some things to go right, but you feel like you have life and you feel like it's possible. I think just every year when you see teams like LA win titles, and I'm not hating on the big markets, I'm not hating on LA, I'm not hating on Boston and those kind of places, but we've seen those teams win. We've seen them win multiple NBA championships, and I think, look, I speak for many fans where I say I'm just tired of it. I'm just, they've won like 17, 18 world championships before, and look, we've seen them win enough. Let's let the little guys step up and give them an opportunity to win. So I think that's what last night sort of represents. It represents the small markets finding a way, a team who, and I don't want to use the term right way because there's a lot of ways that you could build an NBA championship team, but a team who did it through the draft and smart trades, and they found a way to be on top of the NBA, and you have to feel good for them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, again, like I said, it's new blood, and I'm all in for it. So Orlando Magic, let's go. Like, cross your name off of that list of 11 teams left who still haven't won a title. Like, come on. I mean, it's going to take a lot, I know. But if the Nuggets can do it, any team can do it, and I'm into it. I'm into the new, Scott. I'm into the new.
I don't know, Emily. That's going to be tough, man. I mean, that's an organization. They drafted Shaquille O'Neal. They drafted Shaq. They drafted Penny Hardaway. They got Dwight Howard. All those guys were really high picks and still no championship. I don't know, man. It's going to be hard for Orlando to get one.
I know. A girl can only hope, wish, dream. Let me do it like you do with all your Cleveland teams.
Okay,
Let me do it with my Orlando team. Yeah. We got to believe together, okay?
Okay.
Together we will believe.
Okay. I'm going to give you that one. Hey, look, let's talk about some Falcons minicamp now. Let's get on some Falcons minicamp. Falcons began their minicamp today over at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, right where you're standing right now. I was inside earlier. You're outside. There was some really cool things to be. I mean, just this was mandatory, right? So, I mean, a lot of guys who you didn't see in OTAs, guys who kind of sat OTAs out, were there for minicamp. Cordero Patterson, he was there. Got a chance to see him and talk to him a little bit. Jesse Bates, the big free agent acquisition from the Bengals at safety, kind of bringing in some Super Bowl experience there. He signed a big contract in the offseason. He was in the house today, talked to him too. I mean, just what are you most excited about, Emily, as far as the Falcons and everybody getting together under one roof for minicamp?
Well, I always find it interesting, the guys who don't show up or can't participate. Usually when a guy doesn't show up for something that's mandatory, it's contract related. But for the Falcons, 4 guys are not participating. Caleb Huntley, Kyle Pitts, Avery Williams. All 3 of those guys aren't participating because of injuries. Then you have one other guy, Eddie Goldman. He's coming out of retirement, so we didn't see him participating either. But those are the 4 players who will not hit the field with the Falcons during this mandatory minicamp. They all have good excuses. We'll forgive them for that. But for me, I said it yesterday, I'll say it again because I feel the same. I look forward to what Cordero Patterson, CP, can bring to the table when it comes to Bijan Robinson. Yes, Bijan Robinson is a heck of a running back. Yes, he's going to play a lot of minutes for the Falcons this upcoming season. You don't draft a running back that high for him to be sitting on the bench. He is not going to be a bench warmer. He's definitely going to be out on the field, running the ball, catching the ball. But for CP, I'm wondering how he's going to groom Bijan off the field. There's no better vet than CP when it comes to that position. He's a funny guy. He's a caring guy. Football means something to him, and he loves the Falcons. He loves playing here in Atlanta. He's a kid from the South, so this here is important to him. And I think that he will really help out Bijan in his career off of the field. Yes, he'll give him some pointers on the field. I don't know how many he'll actually need, but off of the field, that relationship I think is going to be very important to Bijan Robinson. I think one day, years down the road, he'll say, CP really, really helped me. He helped develop me off of the field. He gave me pointers. He gave me advice that was invaluable to me and my career. I truly believe that's what's going to happen, because when CP walks in a room, you listen. I mean, heck, when he walks into a press conference room, we listen, because he has so many good things to say. I mean, he's lived it, right? He's been doing this for years. Game recognizes game.
Yeah, it was really interesting, too. I was kind of watching that interaction today when I was over at the stadium. You saw, they were doing drills together, Cordell Patterson and Bijan Robinson. And you saw CP. You saw CP coming up to him, really kind of leading him the way, giving him some guidance. And he talked about that after practice. He said, look, I just want to win. So if they draft a guy, look, I understand that, Bijan Robinson's here, he's going to play, but really, he didn't seem like he was upset. He didn't seem like he was fazed. A lot of guys in that situation, when they draft a guy who's probably going to be your replacement, there's some resentment, and guys are kind of, they're thinking about their own careers, and they really, even though they may say the right things, that they're happy about the team getting better and everything, they don't really believe it, because that guy's in there to take their job. But when you talk to Cordero, he really seems to be a guy who genuinely wants to win. He's at peace with what his career has been so far. So I just think he really doesn't mind helping the young guy. I think he understands that, look, he knows how it goes. He knows he's over the age of 30 right now, and when in the NFL, when you're over the age of 30, especially at the running back position or any skill position, they're going to look to replace you. So I think he understands that, but he's the right kind of player that you want in your locker room, because from everything I saw on the field today, he was really helping Bijan out a lot.
Listen, CP is a G-Paw at this point. He's a grandpa, but grandpas have a lot of wisdom, and he's going to pass that wisdom on. And I absolutely do believe that he's okay in the role that he's in now. He's played ball, and he's been a star, and he's still playing after the age of 30, and he knows that, and I think he's going to be such an asset for Bijan Robinson. Now, you did mention that, yes, you think he's fine with not possibly getting as much playing time, and I think that too. But I think one player who might not be as fine with it, and it's not something he told me, but you've got to feel that Tyler Algier might feel a certain way about the Falcons drafting Bijan Robinson in the first round, and rightfully so. Like, if I were Tyler Algier, I would feel a certain type of way. I almost said, like, I would feel betrayed, but that's not the right word, because it's the NFL and every player in it knows what the deal is. But Tyler, in his rookie season, played so well for the Falcons. He had over 1,000 yards rushing. He wasn't drafted in a high round. I mean, he truly took care of business as a rookie, and I'm sure he thought, and again, this is not something he told me, but this is what I think, he probably thought to himself, like, I proved myself my rookie season. I'll be the number one back on the team next year. I'm golden. Like, everything's gravy. And then the Falcons draft Bijan Robinson in the first round, and now he's got to compete to be the number one back all over again. And that's never a good feeling, and he's going to do it. It's part of football. And Scott, let's not act like he hasn't done this before. Every football player has to compete, and they've done it their whole lives, and they've especially done it well if they're in the NFL. But I feel for Tyler, because I hate it for him, because, again, like, for me, I thought he did enough to deserve that spot, and you don't draft a running back as high as they did in the first round for him not to play, and especially not to be the number one guy.
Yeah, I think you're right from a lot of ways. I've talked to both of them in this offseason, talked to Bijan and talked to Tyler Algier. And look, Tyler, he seems like he has the right attitude. He seems like, look, I mean, I get it. It's a business. They want to win. I'm sure Bijan wants carries. I want carries. So, we're going to compete, and that's good for a football team. But I look at it from a couple different ways, too. Look, running back is the kind of position where you can use multiple guys every game, and everyone can kind of be happy, right? I mean, I think gone are the days where you're giving one workhorse back 25 carries, he's getting 100 yards and that sort of thing. I think that running back is a position where you can use a lot of different guys in a lot of different roles. So I don't even think that them drafting Bijan was really a shot to Tyler at all. I think they wanted a running back who has something different and brings something different to the table. I think Bijan brings a different element to the position that Tyler Algier brings to the position. I think Tyler's more of a straightforward runner. He's more of a grunt work guy. I think Bijan will be more of a big-time playmaker. So I think they can really kind of complement each other more than really be competition, because when it comes down to it, both of those guys are going to get carries. They're both going to touch the ball. Bijan's going to get touches, whether it's running the ball or catching the ball out of the backfield. I think they're going to use him as a Swiss Army knife, kind of like Reggie Bush for all those years. I think that's the way Bijan's going to be used. And I think Tyler will be a important player for the team on their offense, and I don't think he's going to be phased out, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
No, and you bring up a great point. I don't think Tyler Algier will be phased out of Arthur Smith's offense by any stretch of the imagination. And I do think they're going to push each other. Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson will push each other all season. But when you pay a guy more money, the money talks.
True.
And the guy who's getting paid is going to go out on the field no matter what. I do think, though, to your point, that yes, carries will be shared, and we know that very well because, anytime I can bring out UGA football, I'm going to. Let me bring up the fact that Kirby Smart does not use one back very often. This past season, national championship season, 2 straight, who ran the ball? I mean, you had Kenny McIntosh. You had Kendall Milton. You had Dejon Robinson. You had baby back Robinson. So there were so many guys who touched the ball, who had carries, who scored touchdowns, rushing the ball for UGA. So, yeah, maybe gone are the days of having one running back who does all the work. And maybe, Scott, that's why they can last a little longer now, because running backs used to not last very long.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a way to preserve their bodies and make their careers a little longer, is by sharing the ball when it comes to that position.
Yeah, that's facts. I mean, that's total facts. I mean, I think when you look at that position, I just think it's viewed a little differently than we're used to seeing it. I mean, I grew up watching football in a generation where you had the one workhorse back. They were carrying the ball 25 to 30 times. I grew up watching guys like, Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas, and even later on, guys like Fred Taylor and, sort of that Eddie George. Those guys carried the football. And I think you're right. I mean, that sort of burden really takes a toll on your body. So I think it's even safer for the game. I think it serves a lot of different purposes. I think it's safer for the game for a lot of different guys to carry the football. And just like you said, I think we're going to extend a lot of careers, because if I'm only touching the ball 10 or 15 times a game, that extends my career, my body. Look, I remember Jamal Lewis, the former Ravens running back who's from Atlanta. I remember he had a kind of a line that really kind of stuck to me some years ago when I was covering him. He goes, look, every running back only has but so many carries in them. So I think that, like you said, I think both those guys can extend their careers. Even Cordero Patterson, I think this is going to help extend his career too. So I think all in all, it's going to be a good thing for everybody involved. Now, let's get to some UGA football. We're kind of UGA football, right? Emily, are you always down for a good Twitter beef?
I'm always Scott. I'm always down for anything that has to do with beef and Stetson Bennett, let's be honest.
So Stetson Bennett was, I guess he threw some jabs, the Senior Bowl director. He kind of made some comments, and I can sort of just kind of skim through some of these. He goes, he says,
please
look,
do, because I still don't understand it. So maybe you're going to have to explain it to me, Scott, because for the first time ever, I don't get the drama. And maybe I'll get it once you explain it to me, but please thoroughly explain to me what this beef is.
Well, I guess drama is relative, right? I mean, this is the off season, so things that ordinarily wouldn't be a big deal and fly under the radar don't fly under the radar in June, because it's football and we don't really have any games to talk about, so we're going to talk about stuff like this. So basically, Jim Nagy, who is the Senior Bowl director, made some comments on Twitter. He goes, the NFL is a genetics league. Simple as that. There's certainly outliers, but it is what it is. And then he says, let me share a quick story. Fall of 2012, I was a scout for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I was in, I went to Utah, and basically he just gave a whole story about, how if you don't have the physical stature that a quarterback should have and everything like that, it's going to be hard to make it. It's going to be hard to make it. So Stetson Bennett, who found that funny, he goes, he answers it on Twitter and goes, rarely matters when you start grooming kids. Thank you for the overarching parental advice, Jim. Perhaps parents with dreams for their kids or kids with dreams in general should listen to you. You can hear the sarcasm in his voice. Master king of the evaluation. So he's really just kind of making fun of what the scout said. And obviously we know Stetson's story. He probably takes stuff like that personally. So, and he passed, I think, did Stetson pass on something in the process? Was it Senior Bowl?
Yes, he absolutely did not go to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. So I think maybe
he was invited. He was invited.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's my thing. After you explain this to me, Scott, did Jim Nagy ever once mention Stetson Bennett and what he said?
From what I can see, no. From what I can see, I could be wrong, but from what I can see, no. But, I think Stetson might have been in his feelings, knowing the fact that he turned down the Senior Bowl. Maybe he thought Jim was sending some subliminals, so he decided, you know how it goes. This is 2023. I think he looked at it as a subliminal.
Well, Scott, the only time you take things personal is when you believe it to be true.
Yeah. That's true, yeah.
So that tells me Stetson Bennett kind of read that and believed it to be true, because he does not particularly have the genetics of an NFL quarterback. So I think that possibly he took that personally, because that's kind of what it is. Listen, Stetson Bennett did great things in college, and he's a king in Athens, and until his dying day, he'll be able to go to UGA and any of its surrounding bars or restaurants, or heck, maybe even here in Atlanta, and sit down anywhere he wants and get whatever he wants for free, okay? This state, he will always be welcomed in this state. Now, when you step out of Georgia, that probably won't be the case, right? So I think it's great for what he was able to do here. But, and the fact that he was drafted as high as he was, and I say high because I didn't think he was going to get drafted at all. So, again, in my opinion, he got drafted high. He went to the Rams. But at the end of the day, Scott, if we just take a look at his numbers, his measurements, all of that stuff, I'm not talking about how many touchdowns he threw. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about physically. I'm talking about genetics. You don't say, oh, yeah, that's an NFL quarterback. You definitely don't.
That's true. And look, I mean, it's, and like you say, he was in his feelings. I think Stetson was, right? I mean, like I said, I think he thought that Jim was maybe sending some subliminals his way since he snubbed his nose up at the Senior Bowl. So, but yeah, I mean, let's be real. I mean, Stetson's a guy who's gotten the most out of his ability, the most out of the tools that he has. And there's a reason why he wasn't a first-round pick, right? I mean, he wasn't a first-round pick because I think most people who watched him play at the University of Georgia felt like he has all the intangibles, but he doesn't really have the tangibles that you expect from a guy who's drafted in the first round. When you look at the guys who were drafted in the first round, well, I guess I shouldn't say that too much, right? Because Bryce Young is like 4'10", and he was the number 1 overall draft pick, right? So I guess maybe. Well,
see, and that is true too. But then you take a look at what he has been able to do, and like also, I've been told how smart Bryce Young is. Like I have been told several times, as far as like if you give him a playbook and how he breaks plays down and how he's able to understand an offense is on a entirely different level than like other guys.
Yeah, true. So I think Stetson got to where he's at the college football level because he had that chip on his shoulder. And I think what we're seeing is another example now of Stetson at the next level keeping that chip on his shoulder. So I think that what got him there is what he's going to continue to do. So I think he's going to look at newspaper clippings. He's going to look at articles, not newspaper. Who reads newspapers anymore? Nobody. But I think he's going to look at internet articles. He's going to pull up whatever he can see on Twitter to give him some motivation to be a better player at the next level. He's going to make it seem like it's him against the world. And look, it worked for him in college, so I guess he feels like in his mind it's going to work for him at the pro level too. So, hey, I salute him. I mean, I like guys like that. I like underdogs. So, I mean, if Stetson can be that, if he can carry that same approach, maybe he'll end up being an NFL star too. Who knows? Hey, so let's talk some more UGA, right? So That's one reason. Well, UGA kind of. I'm going to have fun with this topic. So, CBS.com, their preseason rankings. They rated the UGA football. Well, let me just do it in general here. So they ranked the top 5 wide receiver rooms in the country, college football. So when you look at who appears here, so they have UGA at number 5, which was kind of surprising to me. That their wide receiver room would be ranked that highly. Now, I must say a little caveat here. Brock Bowers is a part of that receiver room. They're including tight ends too. So do you think UGA's receivers and tight ends will be that explosive in 2023?
So I'm glad you bring that up, Scott. When I was talking about this with Lee Smith, who is our photographer in the department. Yeah, Lee. Scott says hello. Lee said, and Lee again, he came on the show yesterday. It was his debut and probably his finale too. But he he went to the University of Alabama. He's a big Roll Tide guy, so anytime we talk about UGA, it's a touchy subject. But he was like, Emily, I don't understand how UGA could have a top 5 receiving room. Like, I just don't see it. And of course, I said, well, what about Ladd McConkey? And then I thought to myself, who else is there? And then I said, well, they must have included Brock Bowers.
Sure.
I said, there's no way that they're in the top 5 if they did not include Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers is probably the only reason they're in the top 5. Let's be honest. That guy could be playing in the NFL right now. Like, he should have been at mandatory minicamp with the Falcons earlier, and he would have been the best tight end on the field.
True.
I mean, that guy is going to go top 5, top 10 in the 2024 NFL draft. Listen, he's going to be the most sought after offensive player, I think, come January of next year. Teams right now are watching him and kind of trying to figure him out. And any coach that you talk to, which during the SEC season, I talked to coaches from several different teams that have to face Brock Bowers, and they hate him. They're like, we hate that guy. We can't stop that guy. We can't figure out what he's doing. And it's always him. Like, when defensive coaches are breaking down film of Georgia, they are solely coming up with a game plan to stop Brock Bowers. And he still finds ways to be able to make noise in games. So they're in the top 5 because of Brock Bowers. I love Ladd McConkey. Lee will tell you that. Lee knows I love Ladd. Great dude. I mean, was like recruit number 2,000 in the country when he went to UGA. Nobody knew who he was, and now a lot of people know who he is. He did a heck of a job for Georgia, and kind of like Stetson Bennett, the underdog thing, like Ladd McConkey is an underdog through and through, and he worked his way into being able to start for Georgia and get a lot of playing time for UGA. Like, if you ask his teammates about him, they'll be like, yeah, we remember him. He was like scout team. There was so many things he had to do to be able to play, and he did all of it right, and now he's being rewarded. So I love Ladd, but yes, the only reason Georgia is in the top 5 is because of Mr. Bowers. So I know you took that personally because of Ohio State.
Well, and that's what I'm about to say. We're getting a rap from Brett here, but I will say, who was at the top of that list, right? We know who was at the top of that list. It was Ohio State, because every year they have the best receivers in the country, the best tandem. They're bringing back, obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr., who may be a top 3 draft pick, Emeka Ibuka, who's going to be, if it's one thing that Ohio State can do, they can crank out wide receivers. I can't guarantee that they're going to have the best football team this year, because Georgia will probably beat them on the football field again. But one thing I know they're going to have over Georgia every year is they're going to have better wide receivers, and they're going to have NFL quality talent at the wide receiver position, probably better than any team in the country. And that's it. I'm done.
All right. Well, you have a great night, Scott. I love when you talk about your teams, because this is what we get. We get you in your rawest form.
Look, that speaks to my heart when you start talking about Ohio State football. So thank you, Emily. Thank you for joining us, and we will be back at it tomorrow night with Sports Tonight. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We appreciate it. See you tomorrow.
Good night.